Hello, everybody. So, my name is Matt V, and I was incarcerated in the California prison system from 2000 to 2006. And today I'm going to be talking about mass shootings. So, I feel like I have a bit of an inside scoop, I guess you could say, or insider's perspective on these shootings or you know, crime in general because I'm an ex criminal. And particularly, my case involved a gun. So I'm not going to say what I totally did because I did that in another video. But in short, I had a gun on me and I went to work. I was working at Del Taco in Fontana, California, actually. And I had a gun on my person. Some guy came in, kind of started problems with me, and I ended up pulling a gun at him. His family ended up being in the car. It was nothing to do with him. But anyways, the main thing is that I had a gun. I could have I could have been a potential shooter. I didn't. I pulled out my gun. He took off, right? But very easily, say he would have continued being aggressive. I could have shot the guy. Could have shot multiple people. Whatever, right? I was an 18-year-old kid at the time in 2000, and I had a gun on my person in a place that you shouldn't have a gun. Similar to a lot of these situations that you hear, nowadays. It wasn't an assault rifle. I had a handgun, whatever. But you hear about these guys with taking guns to theaters, schools, grocery stores, whatever, and shooting a bunch of people. And so, somewhat similar. Okay, somewhat similar. I'm not saying it's exactly the same. Somewhat similar, right? Okay, the insider's perspective is when you commit a crime and you go to jail, you go to prison, if you're any kind of sensible individual, any kind of logical individual, not just you're psychotic, you don't know what you're doing, you have sensibilities about you, then you think about the whole time you're incarcerated, you think about your crime. You ask anybody who's been locked up. And one thing they do is they sit around thinking, why did I do this? What led up to me doing this? Was it something in my childhood? Am I just crazy? Am I psychotic? Depending on what your crime is, what you did, whatever. Probably the majority of people, if you ask anybody who's been incarcerated before, they've contemplated on why they did what they did, right? And I'm no exception to that. And so, over that 6 years that I was incarcerated, I asked myself, why did I have a gun? Why was I so aggressive to pull out a gun on somebody? And so on and so forth. You question the whole situation and everything about it, because that's all you have to do is time to think about it, right? And of course, I don't have any full explanation, because one thing I've learned from studying myself, I've studied other criminals, I watch, the videos on YouTube about serial killers, the mass shootings, everything, right? And you hear other people interview them, why did they do what they did, so on and so forth, right? And you're never able to fully figure out why they did what they did. But there are commonalities. For example, I'm going to talk about serial killers, for example, right? It's not always the case with serial killers, but a lot of the time, they find out that these serial killers, they were abused very badly when they were kids, sometimes raped when they were kids, maybe raped or abused by multiple people, whether in their family, people at their schools, so on and so forth, right? It's a commonality. Not always, but it's a commonality. With these mass shooters, I think they call them spree killers nowadays, where serial killer, they kind of kill a person, they wait, then they kill somebody else. Spree killer, they just go into a public place and kill as many people as they can, right? One commonality they sometimes find with them is that they were bullied either at home or in school, or whatever. There's certain commonalities with them too. Again, not always the case, but sometimes there's commonalities, right? And so I tried to look at those commonalities of why those people had a gun and why I had a gun, right? And so I try to sort all this out in my head. So I've been thinking about it recently because depending on when you watch this video, it could be today, it could be 10 years from now. There was a shooting in Texas, Uvalde, I believe it's called, and so far the death count is 19 children were killed, and a couple of the teachers, right? But again, same scenario, a kid, an 18-year-old kid, 18 like I was 18 when I had a gun, he went, shot up a bunch of kids, okay? And so, you know, you ask yourself, why did he do that? Why does anybody have a gun, right? So myself. So let's talk about myself, right? Because I've questioned why I had a gun, and or why I thought I needed to go get a gun, whatever, right? And one thing I thought about is, okay, I wasn't really abused. I was bullied. I was bullied a little bit in junior high, high school, and so that could be a potential factor. That is, like I said, a commonality. Okay, and another commonality that other people don't talk about is social isolation, right? Because okay, I was around guns a little bit because my dad had legal guns and would take us like out target shooting, and maybe other members of my family had legal guns and they would go target shooting, right? And so I wasn't just exposed to guns, so were some of my cousins, whatever, right? But why did I end up going to prison and majority of my other cousins didn't? You know, the ones who were also around guns, how come they didn't end up, you know, going to prison or becoming any kind of mass shooter, anything like that? They, you know, they end up getting good jobs and doing good. So what's the difference? Okay, like I said, one, I was bullied. I know a couple of my cousins were bullied, whatever. But one, main factor I do know about myself was I was a single child, and I had social isolation. So I didn't go outside a lot, just from whatever circumstance. I don't know. I didn't like go outside. You know, I like staying inside, playing video games. So I was indoors, you know, a lot of the day by myself. I didn't have any brothers or sisters, you know, and so you kind of ruminate on things yourself. Not to mention, on top of being bullied, you know, these are also kind of common factors you see sometimes with serial killers, spree killers, any kind of, you know, something like that. A lot of times it's individuals who are, you know, by themselves a lot, recluses maybe, you know, stuff like that, okay? And whereas my cousins were not. The same cousins that I grew up around, you know, we grew up in the same neighborhoods. Like I said, they had the same access to guns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? They even grew up in worse neighborhoods than me, some of them, right? Like gang neighborhoods. And they didn't do, you know, go to prison like I did, right? But the difference is they went outside more. They had brothers and sisters, regardless if they were bullied at school or not, because I know a couple of my cousins were bullied too, but they weren't as socially isolated as me, right? Okay, and sure enough, I just seen new things that come about this recent shooter, about this 18-year-old who killed the kids at elementary school. Sure enough, I don't know if he was socially isolated very much, but he was bullied. I think he had a lisp or something like that. And this is not justification. I'm just trying to figure out mentally, like I said, why I did that and why he did, what are the commonalities, right? Okay, and the reason this is all important, one of the reasons, right, is because every time one of these mass shootings happens, right, every time, it's always like, we got to do something about the guns. Too many people have access to guns, you know, guns rights, we need to limit it, whether it's trying to ban assault rifles, so on and so forth, right? And I'm